Magic Round was simply spectacular, but the show goes on. So let's get into round 11. G'day, guys, and welcome back to the Casual Athlete, where we have another tipping and predicting video, this time for round 11. So let's take a look at how I did last week. As you can see, guys, we had a phenomenal week last week. 7 out of 8 tips correct, and a lot of punters. If you got on my 1 to 12 or 13 plus, you also had success. I know I did too. A couple of bets over Magic Round got up. The big ones that surprised everyone I know was the Dolphins getting over the Sharks and my Cowboys downing the Roosters of all teams. And boy, that was an absolute sight to see, wasn't it? The Cowboys returning to their fine form from 12 months ago, shutting out the Sydney Roosters. I couldn't believe my eyes, couldn't believe what I was watching. And, you know, they basically had no right to earn my tip, and they proved me wrong this week. And hey, shame on me for doubting them. But with all of that being said, guys, we have the Storm taking on the Broncos for the first game of round 11. And these teams pretty much unchanged from this week. The Storm copped a bit of a hiding from, I would say, the competition leaders at the moment, the Rabbitohs. They look the form team at the moment. The Broncos probably not too far behind them at this point in time. These teams relatively unchanged, so don't need to go through too many team list changes. At the moment, I've to give the edge to the Broncos. However, this game is in Melbourne, and I expect Melbourne to bounce back. So I'm actually going to go with Melbourne at Amy Park, 1 to 12. I think they get up in this game. It's just going to be a little bit too far to travel for the Broncos. The next game of round 11 is the Bulldogs taking on the Warriors on the early game Friday night. And the big in for the Dogs is that the Fox has returned. Josh Adokar coming back from a syndesmosis injury only 4 weeks after doing it. And boy, what a turnaround. The bloke is fast and he recovers even faster. Now, moving on to the Warriors side of things, they have a couple of outs this week. Jackson Ford is out with an injury. Ronald Volkman also comes into the halves there for Dylan Walker being suspended. And Rocco Berry gets a start in the centers. I think with the Warriors, they are showing some absolute brilliant fight at the moment. I can't knock their performances. They're just not getting the wins at the moment. They're making a lot of games close. They kept it close with Penrith. And the Dogs, well, they dropped the ball against the Raiders last week, and I think they'll be looking to bounce back. Both teams off a loss. I've just got to give the edge to the Warriors. I think they're playing a bit better footy at this point in time. Josh Adokar, massive in, but I'm going to go the Warriors, 1 to 12. The second Friday night game takes us out to Penrith at Bluebet Stadium, where we have the Panthers taking on a bit of a wounded Roosters at the moment. And I've got to tell you, this Roosters side, their attack is abysmal at the moment. 16th in the league. Only the Tigers have a worse attack at this point in time. And yeah, again, they've gone with a pretty much unchanged team from last week. Corey Allen stays on the wing. We have Billy Smith in the centers again as well, and Manu maintains his position at 6. I just don't see a lot clicking for the Roosters at the moment. It's just not gelling. I think the experiment has to be over at this point in time, but they're persisting with it, and they're heading into a cauldron out at Penrith, and Penrith haven't been the best team over the last couple of weeks. They took a while to get going against the Warriors, had a lot go their way in the penalties and errors department. And I just think that, you know, both teams aren't quite themselves at the moment. But I do think that the Penrith Panthers will get this game done. I just think it's going to be a little bit too close for comfort. I actually think they might win by a point, and I think Cleary is going to be kicking a field goal this week to get them home, 1 to 12. The first game of Super Saturday has us out at Accor Stadium, where the flying South Sydney Rabbitohs are taking on a bit of a building Tigers team at the moment. They got an inspired win against the Dragons last week. but I don't see them getting up against this Rabbitohs side. I tell you what, the Rabbitohs are by far the competition favourites at the moment. If you're a Rabbitohs fan, I'd be booking tickets to the grand final. That's how confident I am in them at the moment. Saying that, this Tigers side are putting up a fair fight every single week now. They've been competitive against Manly, gotten 2 back-to-back wins. I just don't see the train rolling on this week against a pretty good Rabbitohs team. So I'm actually going to go Rabbitohs 1-12. I think it's going to be closer than people think. Next up on Super Saturday, we're headed to North Queensland, baby, where we've got the Cowboys taking on the Dragons. And geez, this Dragon side, 5 losses on the trot. It's not looking very good at the moment. I think the mid-game switch of Ben Hunt from halfback to hooker, I mean, he's the only reason you guys are not last in the league. So I think I'd leave him in the position that he's been playing pretty much since he was a junior. I know he does it for Queensland, but the Maroons aren't playing in St George Illawarra. So I think we need to leave Ben Hunt at halfback. My Cowboys, though, got a really good win last week. I had no faith. Guys, let me tell you, this Cowboys side have just been the worst team to tip this year. I think every time I tip them to win, they lose. And then every time they don't exceed my expectations, I don't tip them and they win. It's just a nightmare as a Cowboys fan, but we got to win, and that's what keeps us off the bottom of the table for the moment. We're only a couple of wins outside the top 4, if you can believe that. Very congested ladder at the moment. A lot of teams fighting for those positions at the moment. I just think this Cowboys side, can they do it 2 weeks in a row? I haven't seen it yet this year, and the Dragons, well, they will be fired up coming into this game. I'm going to back my homeboys, though. Come on, Cowboys. I think they get it done. But this week, I expect it to be closer, 1-12. The Saturday night game is heading down to Canberra this week, where we have the Raiders taking on the Parramatta Eels. And the Raiders, well, they are hot at the moment ever since their win over the Broncos back in round 7. They've won a few on the trot. And I know they've been close games, but this Raiders team is putting up points at the moment, 30 back-to-back weeks. Nearly let it slip against the Dogs, but I'm not too worried about that. However, I am worried about their opponents at the moment. The Parramatta Eels are just the worst team to watch. You expect so much better of them because they made the grand final last year. And I know I've got a couple of mates who are Para fans, and no one backed me last week when I tipped the Titans. And I wasn't surprised in the slightest when the Titans won last week. I know a lot had to go their way, and Para, fought back, but they've been doing that a lot this year. They get behind in games, and then they score a couple of garbage time tries to make it a little bit cleaner, but it's just not inspired. And it's not what you want to see from a team that made the grand final last year. In saying that, though, they did lose Mitchell Moses last week, and that is a massive loss. I know Dylan Brown got interviewed last week, and he needs to step up. But they've got Jake Arthur coming in, and we all know what happens to Para when Jake Arthur steps on the field. So, unfortunately, I think the Raiders match them pack for pack, and that's going to be Para's big advantage in most games, and especially with Regan Campbell-Gillard out, it's even a little bit skinnier than usual. Wiramu Greg didn't have much of an impact last week, so unfortunately, Para fans, I've got to go against you again. I just don't back Jake Arthur and that halves pairing to get it done. I know Gutho will step up because he usually does when Moses is out of the team, but he's not going to be taking all the kicks, and I think that's a pretty important part of the way Para plays. So I'm going to go Raiders 1-12. We move on to Sunday's games now, and first up, we have the Newcastle Knights taking on the Titans out at Newcastle. And the Knights, they're coming off the bye this week. They missed out on Magic Round. I think there was a little bit of noise about them during the week. I think Bradman Best went away to Bali, got a new tat. Nice work, Bradman, but not sure how that helps your NRL career. But yeah, it's fun, I guess. We'll take it. The Titans, though, they're looking pretty schmick at the moment. I really love the way that their attacking game flows, and that left side is elite at the moment. You got David Fafita, Kieran Foran, and Khan Pereira just absolutely tearing teams up. And Brian Kelly has also been pretty underrated this year. So that is flying for them. They're coming up against a Dane Gagai, Dom Young pairing this week. So pretty strong matchup. So we'll have to see what happens there. But I'm going to back the Titans again. I think they get their third win in a row. And I think it's going to be ugly for the Knights again, 13 plus. Last game of the round has us out at Four Pines Park, where we have the Seagulls taking on the Sharks. And these two teams last week, boy, probably the two most disappointing teams of the round. The Seagulls just did not get anything going against a pretty strong Broncos side. And the Sharks, well, they let the Dolphins score 30 plus points. And it was a bit embarrassing, if I might say so myself, for the Sharks. They are touted as this massive team, but I was so confident going into last week when they were playing the Dolphins. I just thought the Dolphins seem to be a bit of an occasion type team. So with the Sharks, I just didn't think they matched the energy levels of the Dolphins, and they're all effort, the Dolphins. And if you don't match them, then they're going to stomp all over you. And that's basically what they did. The thing that gets me about this game, I think both teams need a win for the Sharks, restore a bit of respect, and Manly to drag themselves out of a slump that could continue to haunt them if they don't get out of it soon. I know Jake Trbojevic isn't there, but that's not an excuse for Manly. And Tommy Turbo has got to step up his game. If he doesn't come to the floor, then they're pretty much screwed, Manly. Sharks, though, I just think that they don't lose back-to-back games very often at the moment. They've got a very elite team. I know they lost a little bit with Hamlin being out, but I just think the Sharks are going to bounce back in this game. However, I do think Manly are going to make it close. So, in that frame of thinking, I'm going to go Sharks 1-12. So that's it for the video, guys. Let me know what you think down in the comments section below. Please make sure that you like and subscribe. We're bringing out so much content at the moment, fantasy, ranking videos, tips and predictions, and more. So make sure that you are notified about our latest videos.